Hey, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to our annual General Assembly Town Hall for the Mount Vernon and Lee District communities. I'm State Senator Scott Surovell. I'm here with Senator Adam Ebbin, Delegate Mark Sickles, and Delegate Paul Krizek. Senator George Barker's on his way. We're going to talk. Each of us is going to talk for 4 minutes each, and then we're going to take all the questions we can from you guys, which is primarily the reason that we're here. So having said that, I'm going to start the timer on myself. And again, my name is State Senator Scott Surovell. I represent the 36th Senate District, which for the time being is kind of the, I guess, the inner core of the Mount Vernon and Lee District communities. But after redistricting is going to basically encompass all of the Mount Vernon, or most of the Mount Vernon, and all of Mount Vernon, most of Mount Vernon, most of Lee District, starting in about 2 years. But happy to take any questions about that. We have a new governor, we have a new lieutenant governor, we have a new attorney general. That's a big change, and a new partisan majority in the House of Delegates, which is a big change for us in Richmond. It's going to change the way our session operates and what's happening, what gets through. I think all of us, we're at the inauguration on Saturday last week. And we also heard a State of the Commonwealth address by Governor Youngkin on Monday night. I think I've had a chance to meet him. I think everybody has probably seen him or shaken his hand at an event or something so far. It's going to be interesting to see how he governs. From my point of view, he's governing very differently than how he campaigned. For example, on Thursday, he appointed his new chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, except he renamed it, took equity out of the title, and charged the person with being the ambassador to the unborn, which was a big surprise to all of us. Our new attorney general kicked off his term in office by firing 30 people, including 17 people who weren't political appointees, which was highly unusual and, from my point of view, very inappropriate. But we'll see how things go once the dust clears on all that. I have, in my remaining 2 minutes, I just want to talk about a couple of bills I have really quick that I thought might be of interest to the community. Number one, I have a bill to create a new funding source for Northern Virginia localities to fund bike and pedestrian projects that are not associated with road widenings. The Mount Vernon and Lee communities were largely built out, way before we were putting sidewalks and bike lanes and bike trails in. And we have a real need for that, especially as we build the Route 1 multimodal improvements, the $1 billion we're going to spend on Route 1. So I'm hoping to make some progress on that. Number two, I had a constituent from Kingstown who was stopped by the Virginia State Police, and they wouldn't tell her why she was stopped, and it escalated into a confrontation. I have a bill that says when police stop you, they have to tell you why they stopped you. And that if you file a complaint, they have to give you a receipt for your complaint, and they have to give you a written response within a certain period of time, which right now they don't. That's another sort of locally driven bill. I've put in a budget amendment to come up with some state money to make sure we get actual hard concrete brick and mortar bathrooms at all of our high schools, football facilities in Northern Virginia. Mount Vernon, West Potomac, Edison, and Hayfield and Justice High Schools they'll have Don's Johns at their football stadiums. And I'm working with all of us on this call to see if we can get that money. I've got another bill. You all may have heard that President Biden announced a big methane reduction effort after he went to Scotland. He's trying, because in America, the methane emissions are 85 times more potent than carbon dioxide at at capturing greenhouse gas. And I've got an interesting bill on how we're going to do a much better job of that. And then I also have a bill to study multifamily buildings. We had that condo collapsed in Florida. We also had a similar problem at River Towers about 6 years ago. We want to make sure that we have a good building inspection system here in Virginia and make sure our condos are properly maintaining their buildings so they don't collapse. So that's a few of the bills I'm working on. And having said that, I've done my 4 minutes, and I think who am I turning over to next? Adam?
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to set my own timer just to make sure that I don't go over. I'm Adam Ebbin, representing for 11 years Mount Vernon and Lee, as well as parts of Alexandria and Arlington. I serve on 5 committees and 4 subcommittees, including Commerce and Labor, Finance and Appropriations, Privileges and Elections, and some others. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about what Governor Youngkin's been up to and what we've been doing to maintain our progress that we've made in Virginia in recent years. He was sworn in as our 73rd governor. We were all there, and he struck an optimistic and unifying tone in his inaugural address. And then he followed that with 11 divisive executive orders and some questionable cabinet appointments. He issued an order to ban critical race theory from being taught in our schools, which is something that's never been taught in the schools. And the governor does not have the authority to set the school curriculum unilaterally. That's the Board of Education. He also forbid local school districts from doing mask mandates, and that's something that's up to the local school boards, and it's a matter that'll be litigated in court. And he nominated Trump's EPA director, Andrew Wheeler, to be our Secretary of Natural Resources, which is something that's untenable. In terms of his agenda that he released yesterday, he wants to repeal a slew of labor protections, including local collective bargaining. He wants to take away the exclusive authority of local school boards to spend your tax dollars by having the Board of Education establish charter schools. I should say they're there to spend your money, education money. And he wants to ban divisive concepts from being taught in schools, but he doesn't specify exactly what he wants to ban, which he doesn't have the authority to, but he wants to do that through the law as well. He also wants to allow those who were fired for refusing to receive a COVID vaccine to collect taxpayer-funded benefits and require localities to hold a referendum if they want to increase their property taxes, which is something that's untenable. We saw what Proposition 13 did in California in the 70s. So we're playing a little bit of defense in the Senate successfully so far. In the Commerce and Labor Committee, along with Senator Surovell and Senator Barker, I helped defeat legislation to repeal Virginia's minimum wage increase to $12.50 on January 1st that's scheduled. In the Privileges and Elections Committee, we defeated an effort to repeal same-day voter registration, which doesn't even start till later this year, as well as reinstatement of unnecessary voter ID laws. On the General Laws Committee, a senator who had been censored before for participating in the January 6th rally brought some anti-mask and anti-vaccine bills that were defeated. And the same senator saw a bill defeated in education and health to make it easier to prescribe horse medicine for COVID. Also, they defeated an unwieldy proposal for parents to approve every book and AV item available in a school library before it's even purchased. So that's a little bit of the big picture. In terms of my own bills, I have introduced 25 pieces of legislation focused on consumer rights, public safety, and making government work for you. They include protecting electric vehicle parking spaces so that only electric vehicles would park there, protections for living organ donors in life insurance and unpaid leave. You should be able to take unpaid leave if you're going to save someone's life. Establishment of an adult use marijuana marketplace. We've been working that over the past year. I want to thank Delegate Krizek for serving on the joint subcommittee on cannabis reform. Also, or I should say cannabis oversight. And in terms of public safety, I'm working on outlawing ghost guns, guns that are undetectable when they go through a metal detector or don't have a serial number. And last one I'll mention deals with your social security number on your absentee ballot. Right now, you're required to have a witness sign it when you return it. And I'd like to have it so that the last 4 digits of your social and your birthday would be sufficient. We saw a number of ballots thrown out for not having a witness signature in this past election. So that's 4 minutes and 5 seconds, and I will stop there.
Great. I see Senator Barker is now on, I think. George, you want to go next, or are you ready to go, or should we go to Delegate Sickles? Okay, let's go to Delegate Sickles.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Sickles from the 43rd/17th Delegate District. This is my 19th year I'm starting now. I'm serving on the Appropriations Committee, the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee, which I chaired until this month, the Privileges and Elections Committee, and Rules Committee, where it is a 10-5 Republican Democratic split in the House. We have a big budget year coming up right now. I'm going to be spending most of my time on budget items, especially as it concerns healthcare and disability services, waiver services, and getting our rates up. We've had a hard time helping our families with disabled children because people can't work for the rates that we pay. We're also going to be working on a fundamental reform and way we pay the skilled nursing industry, the nursing home industry. It's long long-awaited changes. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that through the General Assembly this year. Also, I have budget amendments that one of them would provide $7.5 million of a much larger number to rebuild the capital area food bank in Lorton, which is it's a major facility now, will be even bigger. They need a bigger facility to supply all the charities with food supplies all over the metropolitan area. I'm promoting some educational programs that help teach science and space, NASA aerospace programs, and also working on alternatives possibly to the governor's maybe misconstrued tax ideas. So we need to get a budget through that is can be reliable and doesn't take currently dedicated funding away from our schools. I also am carrying the second, as is Senator Ebbin, the second reference to the constitutional amendment that would give voters the opportunity to take the same-sex marriage amendment that the voters passed by 57% in 2006. Another chance at people to saying, do we want that in our Constitution, even though it's unconstitutional at the national level already. I had a sports betting bill last year. I have a fix for some of that to try to reduce slightly the amount of advertising we're subject to. It's really been overwhelming. I've got a couple of changes to the temporary assistance for needy family program to make the program a little bit more equitable. So I'm going to be busy. I look forward to your questions today and to hearing from you during the session. I see a lot of people I know that are tuned in today, and I thank you for joining us. I'm actually a minute.
No, Mark, you're at 2 minutes and 47 seconds. I'm impressed.
I guess I could keep going, but I'll reserve my time. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There you go. Okay, George, I think you're the most senior senator. Why don't you hop on and introduce yourself? We're doing 4 minutes apiece, and we got everybody on timers here.
All right. Yeah, I'm Senator Barker, 39th district. About half of both Mount Vernon and Lee in my district right now. And I'm looking forward to continue to represent the area for as long as I can. So, but anyway, there are a number of things that have put bills in on. We have a bill limit of 25, and I'm up against that limit now. So a lot of things are need to be done, and we had a lower bill limit last year. So I'm working on trying to make sure we get everything done we need to. On the bill side, the last couple of years, I've been trying to get health insurance plan for realtors because a lot of realtors do not have health insurance as the nature of their jobs. They're not employees of the real estate companies. They're independent contractors, and they therefore don't have the same coverage that most other people of comparable status would have. It's been blocked by the former governor the last couple of times, but I'm confident we will get that done this year. And that will make a big difference to at least 7,000 realtors who do not have health insurance coverage right now. In addition, I'm working with Delegate Sickles on the nursing home issues. We have bills put in to have staffing standards for nursing homes that would coincide with what Medicare does in terms of how the number of people they think need to be providing services, and also we'll address the funding issue. As it relates to funding, the couple of things that I'm doing, some things that will bring some additional jobs to Virginia. Also, we have a fund that deals with some transportation funding that I'm shifting some of the uses of the funding so that we can have more transit services have either low fares or no fares. And Alexandria City is already moving forward with no fare buses on the dash buses that are there. So that helps a lot of people. And in Richmond, it's already resulted in more people riding the buses now than they did before the pandemic hit, and a lot of people got scared off of buses because of risk of infections. The biggest thing I'm doing in terms of the funding of for the budget this year, and we do have a good bit of money, is to attempt to unfreeze the support positions in our K through 12 schools in Fairfax County and all throughout the Commonwealth. In 2009, we put what we labeled a temporary freeze on the number of positions that we would help support. And that would be 1 or 2 year freeze. It's been 13 years. It's time to take it off, and I'm going to put my major effort in on that issue. Also, we'll be dealing with increasing support for lower income people by increasing the amount of benefit that they can get under the earned income tax credit. And also, we'll be dealing with the grocery tax issue. If we end up eliminating the grocery sales tax taxes, what I'm going to insist that we do is have a dedicated funding source to replace that, which will help localities, including Fairfax County.
Your
That's
30-second warning, George.
I'm done.
Oh, you're all done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, great. Paul Krizek. George, I love the house rules behind you.
George, you might want to mute. My name is Paul Krizek. I am the delegate that represents the 44th district. All of those who live in the 44th, which spans from Hayfield, east of Mount Vernon to the river, north all the way to Bellhaven, and along both sides of Richmond Highway in between. The new district, which goes into effect after the next election, will include Bellevue, the Huntley Meadows area, all around the Huntley Meadows, Huntley precinct, and includes Westgate, which is where the Mount Vernon is currently located. So it's all Mount Vernon and Lee district, and I am entering my 7th year, and I'm gaining a lot of seniority now. I'm number 49 out of 100 in the General Assembly, and I'm still on appropriations, general laws, privileges, and elections. I am on one less committee and 3 less subcommittees, but I did pretty well, and that's what happens when we go into the minority and we lose some members. So the majority, the speaker, is the one who decides which committees you are on, and I'm glad that he kept me on those committees. I'm also on a number of boards and commissions, including the State Water Commission, Crime Commission, serving with Senator Surovell, and Broadband Authority, to name a few. It's been somewhat of a slow start, and I think a lot of that's because of the transition with the new administration. And last Saturday, as Senator Surovell mentioned, we were all at the inauguration, and it was a nice, cool but very sunny day. And so there's only really been, I think Friday was the first day we had any bills on the floor, and those were 3 uncontested ones. And Friday morning, we also had, in my P&E meeting at 7 a.m., we had our first bills that we were voting on regarding election law, and I will talk about that a little bit later. Because I'm on appropriations, I thought I would just go through I'll try to go through them all really quickly, but I'm looking at my little iPad here, and I recommend that all of you do the same thing at some point and go to budget.lis.virginia.gov, and you spell out Virginia, and then you can look at all of our budget amendments, and you can also look at our bills. So I'm just going to go through as they are listed on here, but I think it might spark some questions later, so I wanted to go through it. First one is it corresponds with my bill, which is to create a commission to update Virginia law to reflect federal recognition of Virginia tribes. Now that we have the new tribes, 7 new tribes that are now federally recognized, there's a lot of the Virginia law needs to be cleaned up. So that's just a cleanup kind of a bill. But there's a little bit of expense there, $16,000 for a commission. I also have a similar kind of a bill to ask JLARC to study standalone gaming oversight agency. What's happened in the last 4 or 5 years is gambling has expanded throughout the Commonwealth. We have 4 casinos being built in Danville, Bristol, Portsmouth, and where's the other one? Norfolk, and they will be, some of them will be built certainly by the end of this year, probably early next year in 23, and they're going to be destination locations. There's also, of course, other ways to gamble in Virginia, as you probably know. There's the lottery. There's a little racetrack up in Woodstock that's open only in August and September for weekends. There's the big racetrack in Kent County near Richmond that's New Kent, and it's and that is a beautiful thoroughbred racetrack. And then there's the Rosies, which are those are video horse racing machines, and they're throughout the Commonwealth as well. And there's one being built in
All right, you got
Dumfries.
15 seconds, Paul.
Is that it? So I didn't even get through all of my budget amendments, but really quickly, I have some other ones on charitable gaming, and on I've got some to help our local folks here, Lee District Community Workforce Development Center. I've got some money in there at the request of Supervisor Lusk that I think is really important to help them purchase equipment and other infrastructure for outfitting the new Lee District Community Workforce Development Center, which I think is a great opportunity, and I really applaud Supervisor Lusk for the hard work he is doing there. But there's a number of other ones. You can go to that website as I mentioned, and perhaps ask me questions later. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Paul stole some of Sickles' time there and Barker's. So I think what we're going to do next is start taking questions. And so if you want to ask a question, if you look down at the bottom of your toolbar under reactions, you click on reactions, there's a button that allows you to raise your hand. So if you click on raised hand, then I think Philip, what are we going to do? Philip, you going to sort through people and call them out, or am I? Or
yeah, you can go ahead and call on folks and I will ask them to unmute.
it looks like the first person in the queue is somebody named Simona. Simona, can you tell us your full name and where you live, and then give us your question?
Yes, Simona Cipra. I live just down the street from you on Toxmont Road. And my question is, I've heard a lot of bills about a lot of things that affect, I would say, a minority of Virginians. I'm wondering if there's anything that's planned at a higher level for improvements of public health, given everything that we've just been through, in particular, data acquisition, transition, and public health services through the Virginia Department of Health.
Well, I'm going to say one bill I'm carrying, and then I'm sure Senator Barker and Delegate Sickles have something to say, because they are way more involved in healthcare issues than I am in general. But the one bill I'm carrying, which I think kind of relates to what you're talking about, is I'm carrying a joint study between the House and the Senate to do an autopsy of our pandemic response. Basically, do a very comprehensive study across all agencies and all branches of government, including local government, into what happened during the pandemic and our preparedness and how we responded, and all the different malfunctions that occurred, you know, even in things like homeowners associations, and then come back with a report on things we need to change, things we need to do better, things we, you know, need to make permanent, et cetera. And part of that is, I mean, a big part of that is obviously the health response. And I've got a budget amendment in for about $750,000 to hire a professional consultant to assist us with that autopsy. And that's a bill I'm carrying, but I'm sure George and Mark have a lot to say about it as well. And good to see you, Simona.
George, are you going to say anything?
There I am.
Go ahead, Mark, and I'll jump in.
Well, I was going to say, if you look at the national performance across states, while we made some mistakes, we did probably better. I think we're in the top 10 of responses. We have we did a really good job at rolling out the vaccine. Once we got the vaccine stock, we were able to get anytime anybody wants it. It's pretty easy now. We with the Omicron coming in, testing is more important than ever, since it's so contagious, and we don't have that up and running like we should. So we'll be looking at more rapid tests in more places, which we'll need to do to keep people from staying out of the public when they're infected, which a lot of people are. Right now in our chamber in the House, we have several people out. We have a rule that allows people with COVID to vote remotely, but not any other illness. If you're sick for some other reason, you can't vote remotely. But if you have COVID, and we have, I don't know, 6 or 7 people, and it seems to be rotating out with COVID, and we're sitting right next to each other in small spaces. Our side of the aisle only has mask on. The other side of the aisle doesn't wear mask in our chamber. So I mean, it is. I'm afraid we're working sometimes in a petri dish, but we're moving forward. I feel for the parents who don't want their children to go to schools now in a place where all the kids aren't masked. I mean, the governor responded to some parents, but most parents on the other side of this issue, particularly in my area in Northern Virginia. So that's troublesome. But anyway, we will learn as we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly on this issue. When the pandemic first hit 2 years ago, Northern Virginia was singled out in an article as having the fewest hospital beds per residence of any metropolitan area in the entire country. And there was a lot of people were saying, well, we weren't going to be adequately prepared to be able to handle that, but we have. And we've not had an overflow of patients from hospitals within the Northern Virginia area. They've been able to manage things and to be able to give care to everybody. And part of that is the fact that the way we've been able to do it is that we have one of the highest vaccination rates in the entire country. We're at we've had over 92% of Fairfax County residents have gotten vaccine shots already. So we are very high on that. We also have managed how to deal with facilities such as nursing homes and assisted living facilities. And so we've not just had as many deaths in those facilities as others have. And the bills that Mark and I have in dealing with the nursing home staffing levels are going to continue to help us a lot there. So we're doing the right things and we're going to keep at it.
Thank you.
Adam or Paul, you guys want to add anything to that?
No, I put in the chat a bill from Chad Peterson about prescription drug affordability that I'm co-sponsoring. I think it's not it won't change the world, but it's a step in the right direction. But I'll talk on other issues.
Yeah, I think it's up. I think it's up for a vote on Monday in Commerce and Labor. We have to see. So. All right. So thanks, Simona. Stephen Keat, you're up next. Tell us where you live and your question.
Yes, I live. I live on Little Hunting Creek. My question is actually for all of you, and it is a question. It's not lobbying. First, for the senators, SB 433, sponsored by Senator Donovan. And then in the House, what seems to be a companion bill, HB 1081, sponsored by Kathy Byron. I'm not lobbying on behalf of this, nor am I opposing it. It deals with, calculation of enrollees' contribution to high deductible health plans. I only found out about this legislation fairly recently. The introduction, the summary as introduced, is fairly technical. And I would just be interested in knowing if any of your offices are paying attention to it. And if so, what your analysis is. And if, as I suspect, this may be the first time you've heard of it, I'd be interested in hearing back from your offices in the future about what you think of this legislation and whether you think it has any chance. I'm asking, again, not lobbying on behalf of it, but I'm a volunteer with the National Psoriasis Foundation. And in the past, I have contacted you on behalf of step therapy legislation, and you supported that. And I'm very appreciative of that. And it passed. And I'm just trying to see here, for purposes of discussion within the NPF, if this is something that we would want to oppose, support, or what. Thank you.
Stephen, I just looked it up, and Adam and I have to vote on this on Monday, apparently on Commerce and Labor, and you're the first one that's brought my attention to it. I have not been lobbied about it, and I just emailed Senator Donovan and asked her what her bill's about. So I'll get an answer. That's my response. I'm not sure anybody else has one.
I hadn't read it yet, but you asked that our offices be in contact with us. I just want to tell folks the best way to get a response from us is to email our offices directly. with a specific question. That's the best way. But Scott and George will be on the record on Monday because we'll have to vote on that if it comes.
Yeah, and just to jump in, I think there's actually another bill that we will have on Monday that is similar, put in by Senator Monty Mason. And I think Senator Dunabit's bill is going to be rolled into Senator Mason's bill, and that will be the one that will be voted on Monday.
Is the Mason bill the one on the Association of Health Plans, George?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
It's my understanding that Senator Mason's bill allows people who are part of a trade association to band together for purposes of getting better insurance rates, which I think is a good thing. The question is, and I don't know what Donovan's bill did, is how much coverage they get. Are they getting adequate coverage? Does it give them special rights to exempt certain things from coverage? And I would be surprised if Senator Mason did that. So, but I'll look forward to reporting back to you after Monday if you write to our office.
Senator Mason's bill does not have the definition, the requirements in my bill that's specific to the realtors does. His is a broader bill, and basically they would be able to, under his bill, they would be able to have limitations, but also make decisions in terms of which services would be covered.
Right, and I think Senator Mason's bill, like your bill, George, has been getting vetoed for the last 3 years because there was a concern that it would pull people out of the healthcare exchange instead of, and we want as many people as possible in the healthcare exchange or something. But now that Governor Northam's not there anymore, I don't think that's going to be an issue. We've all been voting for it and passing those bills for the last.
Yeah, that will not be the same issue this time around. So.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Stephen, we'll look into it and stay tuned for Monday, 1 o'clock. Me and George and Adam at least will be voting on it.
All right.
If you do come to a position on it, if you feel that the Mason, look at Senator Mason's bill, and if you do have a position, please email us as soon as possible with why you have that position.
I will, but I don't think that the National Psoriasis Foundation will come up with a position because right now they're just trying to figure out, what this legislation means.
Right.
Or if there are questions that people think should be asked when a bill is presented, we also have the ability to do that. So feel free to send them over.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
All right.
Yep. Thanks, Stephen.
All right.
Okay, Maria Varela, you're up next. Maria, why don't you tell everybody on the town hall where you live?
Okay, hi. I live in the Riverside Precinct, walking distance to George's house. My question is for Paul. Paul, with the percentage of mobile homes that are in the Mount Vernon district and with the recent transfer of sales of the Honey Place mobile home park, I'm really interested. I understand you have a bill that would make it easier for nonprofits to get involved in the purchasing of mobile home parks. And could you elaborate on what it's about?
Well, it's a kind of a humble little bill because it's not earth shattering, but I don't want to get your hopes up because I don't even in its humbleness, it's probably not going to make it through. All it does, I have two bills, and I also have a couple budget amendments. I think the budget amendments may have a better chance and would be a better opportunity for the future. But the bills just give a little bit more time for purchasers of the especially the folks who live in the mobile home park to be able to band together and work with a nonprofit. Catholics for Housing, for example, is one that's done that. And has been trying to help on Richmond Highway with one of the mobile home parks there. And right now it's a 60-day notification, and we're trying to get it to 90 days. I've gotten a lot of pushback from the industry, but I think we have an avenue forward, which would be a group convening a group over the summer, over the after session, to come up with some wholesale comprehensive changes to the mobile home manufactured housing section of the code. And I've been going into that part of the code every year and trying to expand it, make it better for the tenants of those manufactured homes and give them more protection so that they are not don't lose their homes. One of the things I did a couple years ago was I made it so that they would have to have $3,500 worth of funding to be able to move their home if the park is sold to a developer who's going to change it and not continue to be a manufactured housing home park. And so I tried to get it to 10,000. And even the 3,500 is only for Northern Virginia. The rest of the state is 2,500. As you probably know, to move an old mobile home can cost as much as $10,000, and it's up to those mobile home owners or to be able. They have to do that, and so it's a real problem. And we have 5 parks, and I'm trying to do my best because they are a perfect example of non-subsidized affordable housing, and people in our parks along Richmond Highway have been living there for many, many years. I've met many of them, and I know that they want to continue to stay there. It's a great place to live, especially during COVID, because you're not in an apartment complex where you have to get in an elevator with a lot of other people and go up and down. And so one of the things I'm really trying to focus on, and we can do this at Fairfax County level as well. I've requested that 10% of the funds allocated to the Virginia Housing Trust Fund be put towards enabling acquisition and stabilization and even improvement of these manufactured home parks. And that would help also the tenants and nonprofit housing providers committed to keeping these affordable and let them purchase and maintain these parks. So that could help thousands of people, not just in our district, but throughout the Commonwealth. And there's about, correct me if I'm wrong, my colleagues can tell me, but there's well over $100 million now in the Housing Trust Fund. And Fairfax County has a Housing Trust Fund, and I think it's more like $20 million. But they could do the same thing. They could put a percentage of that towards supporting manufactured housing, mobile home parks as well. So that's an important thing, and I've been working on that for a number of years.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's really important. The equity, the lack of equity for those folks is horrific. The living conditions are horrific. Anything you can do to help increase the ownership by the nonprofits would be terrific too. Thank you, Paul.
You bet.
Thanks, Maria. Next up, we have Jay Spiegel. Jay, we all know who you are and your name. Why don't you tell everybody who doesn't know you on the Zoom where you live? And your question.
I live in Mount Vernon in Stratford Landing. And my question is as follows. In 2019, I asked Delegate Krizek to put forth a bill that would make it illegal in Virginia for a member of the General Assembly to represent clients before judges, because our General Assembly is one of only 2 states in the country in which the legislature appoints the judges. And Delegate Krizek agreed to do it. He put forward the bill and couldn't find a single co-sponsor for that bill. I think everybody could recognize that it's not ethical for a member of the legislature that appoints the judges to represent clients before the very judges they play a role in appointing. So this year I took a different tack. Since the Republicans took over the General Assembly, I sent the proposed bill to every Republican member of the General Assembly who's not a lawyer and asked them if any of them would put forth this bill. I did not, there were over 35 of them. I did not get a single response, even an acknowledgement of my email from any of them. I did provide that information to Delegate Krizek, but I don't think that he was able to put it forth because the deadline had already passed. And this is a practice which is engaged in by a number of members of the General Assembly, including the Speaker of the House, Todd Gilbert, that might explain why that wasn't done by those Republicans. It's also a practice engaged in by Republican Senator Mark Obenshain and Democratic Senators Surovell and Chap Peterson. And so in the absence of the ability to put the legislation in this year, I'm asking Senator Surovell if he will now cease and desist from representing clients before judges that he plays a role in appointing, which is an unethical practice.
Thanks, Jay. I guess that's a question for me, although you didn't exactly direct it at me, but I assume that's you're directing to me. So first of all, that's been the practice in Virginia, I think, probably since our Constitution went into effect in 1776, or it actually might have been in the mid-1800s we adopted it, because we used to only have one judge per county for the first 70 years that our government existed. But our judicial selection process is unique. In some states, they have actually elections for judge where the judges have to go out and campaign, and the lawyers who practice in front of them have to write checks to them to get them elected. And I think that's a very inferior system to what we have. There's other states that have other methods. In fact, Virginia's system was examined by a commission on a bipartisan-led commission on government integrity back, I think, in 2014, chaired by a Democrat and a Republican. And when they reviewed our system, they recommended no changes. And in fact, they said that the judicial selection process that we engage in Fairfax County was superior and ought to be adopted by every other local delegation in the Commonwealth. And what we do in Fairfax County is we have 25 members of our delegation. I think 3 of us practice law out of the 25. Each of us has an equal vote. And we asked the Bar Association to run a vetting process, and anybody who wants to apply to be a judge, they apply to the Fairfax Bar Association, who has a committee of lawyers who the Bar Association has selected to review them and then make recommendations. After the recommendations are made, the bar conducts an election where every member of the Fairfax Bar Association can cast a vote as to whether or not they endorse or don't endorse or have no opinion on a candidate. The Bar Association then takes all that input and they give it to us. In addition to that, there are 4 or 5 minority bar associations: the Black Bar Association, the Hispanic Bar Association, the Asian Bar Association, the Women's Bar Association. And they also conduct vetting interviews with the candidates, and they send us written recommendations. Then our delegation meets. We have an open public hearing that anybody can attend, where we, as a delegation, interview anybody who's applied to become a judge. Once we've done that interview, we then close the doors. We debate it amongst our delegation, the 25 of us. Then we all take a vote by secret ballot, and we vote until somebody has received a majority to receive that nomination. We actually don't appoint judges; we elect them. We elect circuit judges for an 8-year term and district judges for a 6-year term. And then the statewide judges, there's a different process for that. But I would just note that practicing lawyers have 3 of 25 votes. And our constituents deserve to be represented in those selection processes just like everybody else's constituents. And we're also a part-time legislature where all of us have to have jobs in addition to receiving our $18,000 or $17,500 salary that we get as legislators. So from my perspective, this system has been reviewed, evaluated, vetted repeatedly. It's been found to be not have a lot of faults with it. And when it was looked at independently on a bipartisan basis, it was found that Fairfax County actually was doing it the right way. And out of the legislature, it used to be about 80% were lawyers. Today, I think out of 140 members, I want to say about 25 actively practice law. Maybe about 35 have law degrees, but about 25 actively practice law. So it's not nearly as dominated by lawyers as it used to be. But I think the system works pretty well. And, I'm happy, if Paul or Adam or George or Mark have any comments of their own, they might have a different view than I do, but that's how I see it. And I think that's kind of the consensus of the legislature. All right. So thanks for the question, Jay. Susan Laum. Susan, tell us where you live and what's your question?
Light on my face is weird.
I can't unmute myself.
There you are. We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm in Senator Barker's district in Springfield. Usually I'm advocating for companion animals, and my group will send to each of your offices our positions on the animal bills that are before you by Monday. But today I'd like to talk to you and call your attention about another area I'm very interested in, and that's the environment. And 3 bills in particular have deal with invasive plants and promoting native plants. And a group I volunteer with spends hundreds of hours each year, which feeds into thousands of hours that other volunteers in the county are spending towards eliminating invasive plants, which take over from our natives and impact our ecology in terms of our native insects and other creatures. And thank you, Delegate Krizek has two bills, one which would encourage the state to be a good model for using native plants on state properties, another on developing models for retail plant sellers that would help the public understand better what is a native and non-native plant. And third, and I especially want to call your attention to this one by Delegate Bouleva, because when I first read it, I totally misunderstood the intent of the bill from the summary that went with the bill, and didn't dig far enough into the full text to understand that this is actually a very good bill, and also moving us toward excluding more invasive plants from commercial sales in the Commonwealth. So I'm now rooting for HB 311, HB 314, and HB 491, and I encourage you to do so also. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, this is a great opportunity to lobby my colleagues, because we have all been focusing on our bills and amendments, and we don't always know what each other are doing. This is going to be tough to get through this this new General Assembly, I think, but I do feel like we have. I was talking to the Farm Bureau, and they were somewhat supportive. They're not going to be fighting the bill, so that's the first step, and if they support it, that's even better. And we're going to meet with some folks this week. But the Department of Conservation and Recreation already has a similar program for the state parks, and VDOT has its habitat pollinator program for rest areas. So it's kind of a no-brainer that we prioritize the use of native plants on state properties. And I think I'm hoping that can be a bipartisan effort. And likewise, one of my biggest pet peeves is when I go to any hardware store or plant place and they have no idea what they're selling, and they have no knowledge. And I ask them, I want a native plant. Forget about it. Nobody knows. So it's just, it seems to me that if the commissioner, FEDAX, if Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services could develop a model sign that they can have out there on their website and places like that for the retail sector that explains just the value of native plants and the harm of invasive plants, that could make a big difference. They've already have that kind of program, that approach with identifying food and beverage products, and there's some precedent there, and I think it doesn't cost anything, and it would be a good first step and something we can build on in the future. But if it was up to me, English ivy would not be allowed to be sold anywhere in Virginia, and I'm still pulling it out every day. But yeah, there's some. This is going to be a long battle, but we've really got to work on prioritizing native plant sales in Virginia. We have so many beautiful ones too. Thank you, Susan, for bringing that forward.
I've been fighting native plants since I was 10 years old in my yard. I hate English ivy. Anybody else? Paul, Adam, George, want to take a shot at non-native plants?
Yeah, just briefly wanted to point out that in Governor Northam's budget, there's $600,000 for some coordination of several employees, seasonal employees, to detect and prevent the spread of non-native species. And that's a budget that we'll be voting on. And as members of the Appropriations Committee, Delegate Krizek and Sickles, and Senator Barker, who's second in charge in the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee, will have a hand in whether that stays in the budget. We'll be looking to keep it, or I will.
And I could say that this all involves people doing the right thing themselves. And actually, my property where our house is, we've had it certified by the Audubon Society as not having any non-native plants that are planted around here, and being able to do what we need to do to help make the environment function better in our area.
It looks like Tess Aylshire has some good suggestions over in the chat over there about ways you can learn about getting rid of English ivy in our over at our farmers market every week. Okay, so next, thanks for the question, Susan. Next up, we have Jonna Gagnon. Jonna, can you tell everybody on the Zoom where you live and what's your question?
Hi, Jonna Gannon, live in Franconia in the Ridgeview community. First, before my question, I want to just say here to the English ivy and other running bamboo and a few other things that are floating around between Fairfax and the state. And you'll probably be hearing from Northern Virginia Soil and Water and the county supervisors through EQAC, because there's a few things we're working on, but that was not why I raised my hand. Mine's kind of a more non-specific question. I've noticed here and the Board of Supervisors are starting to use manufactured housing term. I know I feel like this is because, and I want to know why this has been shifted from mobile homes to manufacturing housing as a term. I know the Habitat for Humanity is building 3D housing quickly and cheaply. And I know there's another kind of reminiscent of 100 years ago with the Sears kits for housing, but this is a group that will build your house floor by floor, room by room, and your whole house can go up in a week. Basically, that you just tell them what rooms you want, what sizes, and they manufacture and then they bring them in and stack them up. Term change to be all inclusive for what the future may be holding in these kinds of manufactured housing, or is it just another reason? I know the county's using it also. Thanks.
I think that's probably a Paul Krizek question.
I thought it would go there, Paul.
Yeah, my understanding is, and I tried to use it interchangeably because I think most of us understand what a mobile home is. The problem is that mobile homes aren't very mobile after a certain point.
True.
And I think that is the consensus of kind of people who live in, it's the guidance from folks out there who are advocates for folks living in mobile home parks to call them more manufactured home parks. There's still the same thing. If you go to, there's some one of the great things about mobile homes is they are manufactured in Virginia. There's a number of companies, so it's a win-win when you invest in these, because you're also helping the economy. And the newer mobile homes or manufactured homes, whatever you want to call them, have really good R value, and they're much, it's really one of the greatest affordable housing things. One of the things I also want to do with that in the future, and I also use this opportunity for my colleagues, is the mobile homes are still, and this is one of the problems, and maybe it's part of the problem with the name as well. They're still considered cars or vehicles, so you can't get a mortgage. And so that, and also you can't develop the credit you would have if you did have a mortgage. So you could be living in a vehicle, if you will, for 20 years, and not developing credit that you would get if you had a mortgage. So we need to we need some wholesale changes. I think it's time, and the industry itself recognizes this. So I think everybody's on board. It's just a matter of focusing on it and getting a lot of critical mass. And yes, but we're not talking about 3D homes and things like that. And we're really talking about mobile homes. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I also think one of the reasons for it is that most mobile homes really aren't that mobile anymore. I mean, they don't really move around. It's hard to move most of them. Once they go somewhere, they stay put, and after that, they're torn down. They're not put up on wheels and driven somewhere else. And so they're sort of a modernization thing, I think.
Scott, also, it's important to note that manufactured homes have to meet certain standards. And in the chat, there was some comment from Tess and Maritza that I think Tess was who said that not all manufactured homes are mobile homes, and that Maritza pulled up a definition that's in the chat as well. But they have to meet certain standards, the manufactured homes.
Thank you.
Nice for the supplemental comments we don't get in a live town hall. So next, thanks, Jonah. Next, we had, I think, Julie Strandley, who is on. And Julie, I know who you are. I'm not sure everybody else does, but if you could introduce yourself and where you live and give us your question.
Sure. Julie Strandley. I live in the Annandale, Alexandria area, and thankful to be on your call today. Just briefly, I actually serve on the Fairfax County Planning Commission, and we do our best to make sure that all new developments have native plants in that. So hopefully we're making some progress in that area. My question doesn't have to do with legislation, but it has to do with something of great concern to parents and constituents. Yesterday, the Virginia Department of Health issued an updated guidance on COVID. And it was clearly written to support the executive order that is in litigation. It talks about respiratory etiquette. I've never heard of that. Parents are concerned, and we wanted to point this out and ask what we can do and to raise this for your attention. Thank you.
Sure. So, I mean, I guess I'll take the first shot. I don't see anybody else jumping in, but, I think that, first of all, Governor Youngkin, when he ran, I think ran as that he was going to be a sort of friendly moderate, and I think tried to position himself more on the lines of like Larry Hogan in Maryland than Ron DeSantis out of Florida. But unfortunately, from my point of view, some of the executive orders he's issued early on has sort of shown that he intends to sort of keep stoking some battles over some things I'd hope we had reached a consensus about, or at least in Northern Virginia. The order he issued has created more confusion than it has solutions. School boards all around the state have basically said they're going to keep their mask guidance policies in place, and in contravention of his executive order. And a big reason for that is because his order violates state law. We passed a statute last year, which is effective through March, which basically tells all of our school boards they're required to follow CDC guidance on the wearing of masks. And the governor can't change state law by executive order. That isn't how it works in our system of government in this country or in this state. So, I think that concerned parents need to listen to their school boards and not listen to the governor right now, because your school board is the one that decides policy within your school division, and the policy and guidance that they give are the ones that you have to live with. So that's my response to where people should focus if they want to have clarity about what the rules are where they live.
I think Scott put it well.
If I could,
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just saying that I think local control in this issue is really important. I think it looks like this has become so political that the school boards in areas where Youngkin won are following his executive order, which is, as Scott was pointing out, is odd because they were complaining about executive orders in general for the last 4 years. And then the ones where the governor lost are keeping their mandates. And, I think what you're doing is important right now, bringing this up on a town meeting like this and discussing it with whatever group that you participate in, and discussing it around the state. When you say you speak for people, you better be careful, because you can't speak for everybody. People run for office and say, I'm going to speak for the people. But, it's really speaking to the base, the political base anymore. And it's too bad that it's like that. I wish we had just rational policies based on science. And, sometimes we veer from that. And I think as I mentioned in my opening, where it's incumbent on us to be careful. This is very contagious variant, and the way these viruses work, there's likely to be another one coming down next. So I hope not. I hope this is the last variant. I hope we move away from this and go back to the way we used to live. But I think we need to be careful, because there's almost 3,900 people in a hospital today in Virginia because of this. And as of last week, we only had 150 some ICU beds empty. So as Senator Barker said, our hospitals have done a good job of managing this, and our people, especially up here, have done a good job of getting vaccinated and reducing the pressure on our hospitals. But you just got to keep speaking up, and I'm glad you called in today. Thanks.
Adam, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that 2 things about the mask mandate in schools. Governor Youngkin was quoted as telling people they need to listen to the principal till this is settled in court. And we had one overzealous parent threaten a school board, I think out towards Winchester, with a gun, not with a gun, threatened to come back with loaded weapons if they didn't let their kid have mask free. So it's tremendously polarizing. So I do want to compliment the governor for saying that he's going to put an emphasis on encouraging people to fulfill their civic responsibility to be vaccinated. That's not how he put it. That's how I put it, because I think it is a community responsibility. We're protecting each other. And I hope everyone on the call who hasn't had a chance to be boosted yet will consider it a patriotic or civic act to help protect their fellow citizens and possibly free up a hospital bed in an ICU for someone who needs it for a reason other than COVID.
Yeah, and Adam, I think in the governor's State of the Commonwealth address on Monday night, he reiterated that every Virginian should get vaccinated, and he reiterated that every Virginian should get boosted. And the person you referenced who threatened the school board on the other night was charged with a Class 1 misdemeanor yesterday as well for making a threat on school property. So anybody else want to hop in on that? Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Julie. Next hand I see is Billy Vasquez. Billy, can you tell us where you live and what's your question?
Hi, everyone. I'm in West Alexandria, so popping in from Senator Ebbin's district. And I, less of a question, more of a comment. I know it's already on Senator Ebbin's, in his perspective, or, can't think of the right word. But I just wanted to highlight Senator Morrissey's bill on eliminating or restricting the use of isolated confinement. I know it's come up repeatedly over the years, and I'm hoping that this could be the year, but we'll see. So I'm hoping for your support if we can get it to get us in line with international standards, what New York just passed this past year. So fingers crossed.
Thank you, Billy. What Billy's referring to is the use of solitary confinement in Virginia prisons. I've been to, I think, four of our prisons now where they had solitary confinement. And I'm happy to report I asked Director Harold Clark of Corrections the other morning in the Public Safety Subcommittee of Finance and Appropriations for the status of how many prisoners were being denied in the cell for 23 hours a day or more. And he said none. He said that right now that all the prisoners are getting at least 4 hours outside the cell. The issue with Senator Morrissey's bill, which I'm co-patroning, is that last year there was a tremendous fiscal impact put on it to end solitary because of the staffing they claim they'll need if they let people out for more supervision or that sort of thing. So it's a balance, but it is, the UN does define as torture solitary confinement. And I've been there and I've met with the prisoners, and we have an award-winning program called Step Down from Solitary, where prisoners earn privileges. First, they earn the right, those that were in solitary, to just sit at what's basically a cage next to another prisoner and socialize if they've been in solitary for years, so they can talk to them. And then they get to take anger management courses, substance abuse courses, sometimes while they're still handcuffed to a desk outside their cell. And then eventually they earn the right to group dining privileges and group recreation privileges. And that's what I want to keep moving towards, because most of these prisoners are going to be let loose into society eventually after they pay their due. And it's not a productive excuse. It causes mental illness, and it's just basically a form of torture. It should only be used in extreme disciplinary cases for a limited time for prisoner safety. Thank you for raising the issue.
And thank you, Billy. We actually had that bill in the Senate Judiciary Committee, I believe, on Monday, and we reported it out on a party line basis. And now it's over to George and Adam and the Senate Finance Committee, where they'll get to look at that fiscal impact statement again. But I voted for the bill, and happy to vote for it again if it gets to the floor. So that appears to be it with the electronically raised hands. Philip, are you monitoring questions on the chat or on Facebook that we can answer?
Yeah, we have a lot of questions in the chat, and I can go to the first one that we received when we were starting out if you'd like me to start with that.
Go for it.
Okay, this one comes from Kathy Hosek, and she says, does anyone have information on where these charter schools are going? Who is in charge of that initiative? I have a lot of questions.
Who wants to take a shot at charter schools? We've been talking about this for all 13 years I've been in the legislature.
I haven't read the bill in full, but I just want to say that right now, if a a group of parents wants to petition a local school board to form a charter, the school board can grant it, and they've done that in limited circumstances. In a lot of cases in Northern Virginia, there are magnet schools or areas of concentration so the affinity for the charter school is not needed perhaps as much. But the issue that I have, and that many Democrats have had in the past, is local control of your local limited tax dollars that go to education. So I'll be looking at those bills if they do come to the floor with an eye towards, is the state directing a locality where to spend their limited education resources or not? And, you know, are they truly public schools or not? Because Youngkin said in his State of the Commonwealth, he didn't care what we called them, whether we called them innovation centers or schools or whatever. And I tweeted back, you know, that what they are usually is a diversion of taxpayer funds. But if a local school district wants to spend money for a school of concentration that meets the same standards that the other schools have to meet, I'm open to that. But beyond that, I have serious questions.
Right. And Adam, I know one of the other complaints that I've heard from other members, which I share, is that the quality of a child's education shouldn't be a function of whether they can win a lottery. And, you know, often if you want to get into one of these charter schools, you have to apply, and, you know, they only let in, like, you know, a certain number of the kids that apply to get in. And that is not really a concept I think many of us, or at least I don't adhere to when it comes to our public schools. But also just legally, under our Constitution, our school systems are controlled by our local school boards and or school divisions. And the way legally, I believe they've tried to get around that. We had a constitutional amendment, I think, I want to say in 2011 or 12, which died on a bipartisan basis. But the way they've tried to get it in without changing the Constitution is to set up regional charter school divisions, where there would be like a new division that covers multiple counties, and that would have its own new school board. And then that division would create charter schools over the objection of the locality. And I think that's how they're trying to get around it. That bill has been introduced in both the House and the Senate. That bill also received bipartisan opposition in prior years, although it passed, I think, in 2017 and was vetoed by Governor McAuliffe. But the makeup of the legislature was very different back then. And it's also very easy to vote for a bill when you know it's going to get vetoed. So it's not really clear to me where all the votes lie today, but I think it's going to be a very vigorous fight here in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
One of the things to consider in the big picture is that we're underfunding K through 12 from the state level. Historically, and back when we had a recession, we limited the paying for the support staff. We cut that back to like 30% of the support staff costs. One of the biggest issue before us that would help Fairfax County is to take the cap off of support staff funding. And since we're not really doing our duty now to the system we have now, to plow money somewhere else is something you have to really take a close look at. And I just want to say that if Fairfax County School Board wants to create a charter school, as has been said here, they can do it, where no one's stopping them from doing it if that's how they want to spend their money. So we have some really tough choices to make on how we spend the limited dollars, even though our budget today is in better shape than it's ever been. They're still not unlimited.
Right. And everybody should remember that given our relative wealth in Virginia, we are number 49 in teacher salaries in America. So just to give you an idea of how we're funding our schools right now, our existing schools right now.
I was involved 10 years ago in actually 11 years ago, I guess now, in the current law, drafting the current law that we have on charter schools. And what we did was we said charter schools can be operated in any jurisdiction. You have to go through your school board to get approval of what is being done there. And the local jurisdiction is responsible for funding of those. So it's locally run, locally decided upon, and locally funded. And that's the way I think it should be.
Thanks, George.
Let me just say that I think the real focus has got to be on funding the public schools. Delegate Sickles mentioned this. The Governor Northam in his outgoing budget proposed an additional $2.4 billion in general funds over the biennium and 751 million of that is for salary increases, 500 million for school construction, which is a big problem throughout the Commonwealth. Even in Fairfax County, we have a couple of schools that really are subpar. So that's where we need to focus our energy, to my mind, especially on our local schools here. These teachers need to be paid more. I see that Tina Sims has been she's raised her hand and has been trying to get our attention.
Yeah, I was going to call her next. Yeah,
Okay.
She's been very active videoing and iPadding. Tina, can you unmute yourself and tell us where you live and what your question is?
I live at Cityside. Delegate Sickles and Senator Ebbin are my senator and delegates. I go to Richmond every year. We haven't been the last 2 years. I'll be doing the lobby week in the end of February. I just wanted to bring up, I heard that Virginia, Alexandria Motel is closing down. Is that going to be affordable housing? Or do y'all know what that's going to be?
Which hotel?
Alexandria, across from Krispy Kreme on Route 1.
Okay, Tina, I know the hotel, and I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I think that Supervisor Stork would probably have a better idea. And, he has his town hall coming up in a couple weeks. You might want to cue that one up at his question and answer session during his right before his bus tour. But
okay, what about Brookside? Does anybody know what that's going to be? That's especially talking about being sold, and I heard it's going to be a Sunrise Living. So
I don't know either. That's right. I'm sure Stork might know, or Supervisor Lusk might know. But
okay, I just wanted to ask.
Okay.
So the mobile home down by Costco's, it is going to be sold and it's going to be taken away.
Has been sold.
Okay,
Not
that's
taken
been
away.
A long time. It's been a long time. Okay, thank you. I really like the meeting, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tina. Philip, what do we got next?
All right, I'm going to pull another question from earlier on in the conversation. I believe this is when we were talking about group association health plans, from Deb Matthews. Appreciating the challenge of real estate agents who are not employees have in obtaining health insurance, would Senator Barker have a similar position for other non-employee business professionals, such as sole proprietors?
Yeah, that's why we have two separate bills, because we have a very comprehensive bill that's being done for the realtors. But then Senator Mason, and there's there's a similar bill in the House. I think it's an identical bill that is being carried by I forget who, maybe Delegate Wilt, or I think he may be one carrying that bill in the House. And those are broader bills and would provide opportunities for others to be able to develop insurance plans for different categories of people. And so we're trying to provide options for people and get as many people as we can covered. We've had a significant decrease in the number of people who are uninsured, but there still are a number of Virginians who are uninsured, and we need to make sure that they have opportunities to be able to have their own insurance plans.
Great. Thanks, George. And by the way, I see Maritza Zermano just noted that Supervisor Stork is somewhere on this Zoom. We're glad to have Supervisor Stork here present. And Dan, if you're there, not sure if you know the answer to those two questions about those two hotels that came up, if you heard them. Philip, do you need to unmute him?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. The answer is that the Alexandria, I'm not aware of any specific plans for that right now. For the other hotel, there are plans to build a housing project there. It's in the very early stages, but they have come to the Board of Supervisors and they're looking for changing the comprehensive plan and zoning to be able to do that. So it'll be some time before that would go through, but it is active in the consideration right now.
Great. Thanks, Dan, and thanks for being on and for all you do, keeping us informed in Richmond and helping our community as well.
Well, thank you guys for all that you do, and you got the big heavy lifting this year. Hopefully you keep us safe and protected from any bad stuff, and you can keep all the wonderful things we've gotten done the last couple of years because it made a difference for our community. So thank you.
We know what our job is.
Excellent. Let me know how we can help.
Certainly.
Thanks, Dan. So I see Stephen's hand is up again. Stephen Keat, you have another question. Why don't we, is it a quick one? You're muted, Stephen.
Okay. Yeah, no, just the comment that was, or the clarification that was just made on the health legislation that I had asked about before. I just want to see if I understood that correctly. It sounds to me then that this legislation would affect realtors and other groups that wanted to form their own, get together for their own health insurance, and it wouldn't have an impact on the general public. Is that correct?
I think it has to be trade associate. You have to be a member of an association. So
Okay, but for somebody who's not a member of an association, it would have no impact. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, in a number of states, when they've done these types of things, the Farm Bureau has sponsored it. So they're, that way you get a lot of farmers who are sole proprietors, basically, of their farms and things. And what it does is it allows people who have like situations to be able to band together with an insurance plan. And they don't have to be employees of the same company.
Okay, but again, for the average person, this will not have an impact on them. People who already have health insurance.
For people who already have health insurance, no, it would not have an impact on them at all. So,
all right, thank you.
Yeah, one of the big issues that's being debated in Congress now is how to affect the Affordable Care Act, healthcare.gov exchange. And during the pandemic, you can be up to 600% of poverty level and still qualify for subsidized insurance. You probably know that, Stephen, but whether that's going to continue, we do not know. The other thing we're doing to lower costs for people who have to buy insurance in the individual market is establishing a reinsurance program. And what that does is caps out an insurance company's liability for any patient that goes over a certain expenses in a year. It would go to a separate fund. Some companies, particularly self-insured companies, have their own reinsurance program. We are going to establish that. We're waiting for the federal government to finish their decisions on how to change the Affordable Care Act to know what the numbers look like for that, because the federal government will help pay for our reinsurance program depending on how much it benefits them. It's a pure numbers thing. And so we are trying to do what we can to reduce the cost in the individual market. As far as sole proprietors go, we do have a statute we passed a few years ago that said an individual can be a group. And we passed that. I don't know how that happened, but the bill that for the realtors, George Barker spent a long time on that, and we made sure that did not undermine the overall market. Other bill I have not read yet. I'm not going to commit to supporting an association bill until I know what it actually does and whether it works. Maybe Senator Mason has worked out the problems with it that he's had before, but I don't want to vote for something that might undermine larger markets and hurt the individual market. The good thing, I guess, is only 7% of Virginians have to buy their insurance in the individual market. We have a lot of good large employers in Virginia. 71% of people with insurance work for a self-insured entity, like Fairfax County Public Schools or Northrop Grumman, or any company really with more than 200, 250 employees. They start exploring self-insurance. It's regulated by the federal government under ERISA and not by the state. So it's a little complicated, but we have been working up until this point into doing what we can to reduce the cost for people in the individual market where the high costs are more noticeable and where people were having harder problems a few years ago than they're having today.
Okay, well, thank you to everyone for the insights you shared with me.
Certainly.
Thanks, Stephen. Kathy Bram, looks like you're next. Tell us where you live and what's your question?
Hi, thanks. I live in Lee District. I'm over by Lewis High School, which is really exciting for me to see that sign every time I drive out of my community. But I would like to ask basically all your opinions about the suggestions that the new administration and some other members of the House and Senate are proposing on voting rights. I know many of us on this call are real advocates on voter access and voting rights, and they're very concerning to many of us. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. Adam is the almost chairman of the Privileges and Elections Committee, and he and I killed a whole bunch of bills this week. He should probably take the first shot.
Yeah, just generally, I'd say that I think it's fair to say that all of us on this call want to make it easier to vote, safe and secure and fair elections. We have protections in place to make sure that our elections are not compromised. And we have, there's one bill, we do risk limiting audits to make sure the machines are functioning properly. So I don't see a need for wholesale changes myself. And I think it's fair to characterize most of the Republican proposals as things that would erase the ways we've made it easier to vote in recent years with no excuse absentee voting and 45-day absentee ballot period and the same day registration and stuff. Paul is on, and Mark are on the P&E committee in the House. I know Paul was telling me he had some thoughts on this as well.
Thanks, Senator. Yeah, we went from the now we're ranked as the 12th easiest state in the country to vote in, which I think we were 49th prior to a couple years ago. So there's been some landmark changes, and you can't say it's hurt the Republicans. They did quite well in this last election cycle. They won all 3 statewides, and they picked up the House of Representatives. They picked up 7 seats there and the majority, and they have the new speaker. And yet there's still a lot of Republican partisan bills coming down. And you just heard from the senators that they killed a number of them. On Friday, we had our first P&E meeting. Delegate Sickles and I are on there, and we had some of the less controversial ones came through there. But I think the people I don't think it's helpful either, and it's confusing if you change change up the rules all the time. For example, the ballot drop boxes. If all of a sudden they go away, people are going to be wondering where they are. For the return of absentee ballots, and the same thing like my postage prepaid envelope for absentee ballots. If now that you have to put a stamp on it, there'll be people who forget to put a stamp or don't put a stamp because they think that the law is still what it was when we passed that, and then those votes won't get counted. So there's a lot of concern around that. We are trying to actually even help continue to help with voting progress and we had a bill on yesterday morning at 7 a.m. in our P&E meeting to expand the definition of disability for purposes of providing assistance outside of the polling place to voters with disabilities, to include any permanent or temporary disability, not just physical disability. And that was defeated on a party line vote. Ranked choice voting also died on a party line vote, even though there was a Republican Delegate Davis who had put one of the 2 ranked choice voting bills forward. So there's not going to be any progress on making it more equitable and accessible. But with the Senate, as you heard, they are not going to let anything get through that's going to make it even more difficult. So I don't think we'll see much change, but you'll see a lot of bills. I think that P&E committee has about 60 more bills to go through. It's going to be very busy the next couple of weeks.
I'll just note on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I just want to note on voting a couple of things that might actually pass. Number one, Senator Vogel, who used to chair the Privileges and Elections Committee before the Democrats took the majority in the Senate, is carrying a bill to redo the state election board to make it evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans and try to make it less political. And I thought it was about to pass in committee last week, but then we asked that it be worked on a little more. I mean, some of us
She's going to change it so it won't be an even number. It would
Right.
be,
We had some concern about what happened on the redistricting commission, given that the deadlock that occurred, that having an even number might result in deadlock perpetually, like the FEC or whatever. But in any event, there was an interest in general in the committee, a bipartisan interest in trying to take away a partisan majority on our state electoral board. And I think we're sort of sincerely trying to figure out a way to do it. And you might see that emerge. In addition, we had a joint study that met over the last 12 months that I served on with a few other senators and delegates, bipartisan basis, where we reached a consensus on prohibiting the personal use of campaign funds. We're creating rules around that. We're one of the only states in America that doesn't have it. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to enact that, but because we developed those rules on a bipartisan basis, but I'm not sure what's going to happen with that bill in the House yet. That one was up also this week, but we carried it over because some people had some questions. And there was also a couple other reforms we did. For example, requiring electronic filing in all of campaign finance reports in all local elections came out of that committee, and some other things. There might be a few things we get done this year, but for the most part, I think it's going to be deadlock on voting
yeah,
rules.
there's one big bill though that should be mentioned, which is the constitutional amendment to make it
easier
for people who had committed a felony after they paid their due to be able to register to vote easily. In the past, currently they have to have their voting rights restored by the governor, and we're one of the few states that require that after you've completed your sentence and done whatever else you have to do. Senator Mamie Locke and Delegate Charnel Herring and a Republican delegate have introduced what's called the second resolution of the constitutional amendment, meaning we passed it last year, and for it to go to the voters, it would have to pass again, just the same way that Delegate Sickles and my amendment to fix the stain on the Constitution, the marriage restrictions. And that's going to be a tough fight, but the fact that there is a Republican sponsor in the House, it's really up to House leadership as to what's going to happen with that, if they're going to allow their members to vote, knowing that the majority of their members are against it. We only need about 3 or so.
Yep, 3. Okay.
Tess wants to know the name of the sponsor. The reason I didn't name him is because I don't know his name. Is it Cherry, Mark?
Mike Cherry. I think it's Mike Cherry, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Delegate Cherry, the new freshman delegate.
Yeah. So next up, Karen Kennard. Karen, tell us where you live and what your question is.
Hi, I'm in the Bush Hill area of Fairfax County, moving from Senator Barker to likely where you are the incumbent, and Delegate Sickles is stuck with me. But anyway, in either case.
Glad to have you.
You probably, if you looked at the comments I've been debating about, it started with the replacement for the witness mark for people that live alone for the ballots. And I help people get IDs, and it's hard for people to get a government ID. So I like the version where you put your birth date and the last 4 digits of a social security number. But in debating, really the bigger issue, and my group helps people more to get the IDs for housing and jobs and government benefits. And we help a lot of marginalized people and work with churches and homeless shelters and domestic violence centers to help people get IDs. And it can be very complicated getting the documents and all. So are there things underway in the legislature to make it quick and easy for people to disprove and get their IDs and get them replaced?
Well, they would still have to go to a government office. I'm sorry, Mark.
What?
You mentioned your bill earlier that helps on this outside the envelope thing.
Yeah.
And Paul, I think we had in the House too, but I can't remember who's carrying it.
That's Delegate Bloxham, I think.
Okay.
I think it's Bloxham, Henrik. Okay. So the bill that would let you not have a witness signature, you would have an option to either continue to have a witness signature or I'm changing the bill to mirror Delegate Bloxham's bill because I think it's our best chance of getting something through the House. It would be either you would get the witness or you would give the last 4 of your social and your birth date.
Okay.
So that would be the option. And I'm not including the Virginia driver's license number because that's not in the Bloxham bill, and the DMV doesn't have the DMV. The Department of Elections doesn't have the DMV database, is my understanding. But I'll talk, you know, if Bloxham wants to change his to be more expansive, I just want to mirror his.
And I'm not against IDs, government IDs just make it easier for people because they need it for so much more than voting. And I have another question later on that I'm hoping are already in existing laws. And one area I'm concerned about is the death threats of violence against election workers, school board members, public people in general. Do we have tough enough laws to do that? And as law enforcement keeping an eye on that getting worse as it seems to be?
I'm not aware of special protections for election workers from violence, just the same as everyone else. I'm not aware of a special protection that's available for them, but that's a great idea for a bill for next year.
Okay.
If they don't have them already.
And one other thing is the appointment of Wheeler as head of the EPA. We don't have a conflict of interest law that would protect the key lobbyists for the coal industry.
He has not lobbied for the coal industry for a number of years because he's been with Trump for 4 years, and so he's had a. So the fact that he was a lobbyist, we don't have a law against someone who was a federal lobbyist from being appointed. No.
Are you going to confirm him?
No, I think it's fair to say that Scott and George can chime in, at least in the Senate, that there's we don't know of any Senate Democrat that's committed to vote for him. And I think it's fair to say that he has an extremely uphill fight. He's going to appear on Tuesday afternoon at the Senate Ag, Conservation and Natural Resources Committee, where he'll take questions from members of the committee. And then his nomination will be decided at the Privileges and Elections Committee. At least that's the preliminary gatekeeper. And I don't think his name will emerge on the resolution from there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the final vote on that will probably be on Friday on the floor.
Okay, I'll look for that. Thank you.
Great. So Tina, you've already gone, and I see that Shirley Ginwright has her hand up. So Shirley, I know who you are and I know where you live, but why don't you tell everybody else?
Yes, thank you. A very good meeting. Thank you very much. I'm Shirley Ginwright. I live in Mason Neck, Virginia. So my question is, and it has nothing to do with what you're talking about now, but it does have something to do with IDs. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I work with the Cameroonian community, and there's an issue with some of them having come to the country through ICE, and they've gotten stuck here in Virginia where they're unable to get any type of ID, and therefore they can't get jobs. I was able to work with Governor Northam's office and the director of the Department of Transportation in Richmond to get two of the individuals an ID card. But part of the problem is that they have documents that these individuals must have in order to get an ID. And when they come through ICE, ICE take their passports and give them a copy. DMV will not accept a copy. However, DMV will accept a lease written by somebody that nobody knows, that is not official, but DMV also will not accept an official federal government document. So now that Governor Northam's office, he's out of office, I was working with his office to try to get that changed through DMV. So my question is there any way that we can change the law or DMV requirements that will make it easier for these individuals to get ID cards so they can work and become citizens?
So Shirley, thank you for that question. You know, I carried a legislation in I carried it for 4 years, finally passed it in 2020 to allow folks that couldn't prove a legal immigration status to be able to obtain a driver privilege card in Virginia. And and it's not an official driver's license, but it's not a real ID, obviously, but it's a driver privilege card, which is state identification. That's changed thousands of lives already. I think over 90,000 people have taken advantage of it. Last session, Delegate Elizabeth Guzman carried a bill which expanded that, which allowed the DMV to issue identification cards to people who could not prove their legal identification, their legal status. And the documents by which those people can establish their identity with the DMV are set by statute. And so the only way to broaden the categories of documents that the DMV could accept would be to change the law. And in our current partisan environment, I think that'd be probably highly unlikely.
Well,
My
they
guess.
can, some of the requirements that they have can actually be changed, because a lease is not a legal document. So you're asking somebody to give you a copy of a lease that could be written by a cousin, and
Right,
then you'll
well,
use that.
I got it. Well, I'm looking
So
at
I think it's a DMV issue, and we went to several DMV locations, and I think they're completely untrained on the law when it relates to that.
Well, Shirley, I would say that, you know, as with any kind of problem with the DMV, if anybody's having a problem, they should contact our office, and our office can work with the DMV to see if they're getting the right answer. I've often found that solves DMV problems, and it wouldn't be the first time that a DMV employee was wrong about something. So that's what I would encourage you to do. And then if after doing that, you know, we find that the information is incorrect, or that we ought to change the law, we can talk about it. But it's often in this environment, I think broadening the category of documents to prove things would be hard. I mean, one of the complaints I heard during the driver privilege card process was the concern about how some documents can be faked. And so they often like to be able to at least look at the originals to make sure they're looking at a really good version of either a foreign driver's license or a foreign passport, because, you know, it's a lot harder to look at a copy to see if it's actually authentic or not.
Right.
So,
but they won't even accept documents from customs, and that's a federal document.
It may be something that you want to work with Congressman Byer's office on, getting them people to get their original documents back from ICE if they've once they've been granted legal status as an immigrant or a refugee into this country. If they have status to get a green card, perhaps there's some way the federal government could, through regulation, allow them to get their document back, the original.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Right, so I think we're going to take questions for maybe another 10 minutes, and each of us can hit maybe 2 minutes to close or something. And if that's good with you guys. So,
like a Facebook question? We have one question on the Facebook, if you'd like one.
Go for it.
Great. From Linda Brown, this question directed to Delegate Krizek. Regarding the governor's mandate on school staff no longer being wearing masks in Stafford County, if they do wear masks, if their supervisor goes along with it, is it against the rules to do so if their supervisor goes along with it?
I thought we already discussed this mask thing.
I think we had a little conversation about, but just wanted to see if you wanted to add anything to that. That was our one question from Facebook.
The governor just put out new mask information yesterday, which I haven't had a chance to read, and I do know that his new executive order that we've all said is probably unconstitutional goes into effect on Monday. So I think
illegal, not unconstitutional.
Oh, it's illegal. Okay, illegal. Thank you. Look, I mean, my concern is you've got kids who are scared to go to school with other kids that don't have masks on, and they should be focusing on their studies and schooling and not worried about their health. And you've got some children who are immunocompromised as well. And so it really, as we said before, it really should be left up to the local school board, and I hope that's what will end up happening.
All right. Tina Sims. Tina, you are up again. You have another question for us?
I just want to know when the next meeting will be, because I've got 9% on my phone, and I want to make sure that I don't miss the next meeting. I apologize.
Which meeting are you referring to?
So do y'all do a monthly meeting every month, or is it just every once in a while?
No, this is the one meeting we do for Lee and Mount Vernon, and then each of us individually has additional town halls. I'm doing town halls like the next weekend all over my district, and everybody else is doing the same thing, I think. And
The next one that I have is the 29th of January, so I can be at that one then, right?
okay,
All right, thank you.
Philip, what do we got in the chat?
Tina, this is Mark Sickles, your delegate. We do have a South County all delegates town hall. If you can live without senators, it's Delegate Krizek, myself, Delegate Tran, and Delegate Watts, and we've done that about 4 times a year lately. So we'll make sure that you get on the list so you'll know about those. Thank you.
There has been a big question I've been getting. I don't know if everybody's gotten this regarding a football team coming to Virginia. I can just say unequivocally I'm against using any kind of taxpayer funding for that. But my colleagues may want to opine.
Well, 2 of the 3 locations they're proposing are in the 36th Senate District as it's currently drawn until 2024. And it's actually more than a stadium. It's the proposal is to build a stadium, a big town center, a big training facility, housing for the players, corporate offices, a lot of other things, sort of similar to. Say again.
Hotels.
Yeah, right. Hotels, right. And it's very similar to what that other football team called the Cowboys built in Texas. And I think the Vikings have a similar project, and so did the Braves did something similar. I've been to the one in Dallas because JMU played the national championship there about 2 years ago, and it was an amazing facility. I stayed in a hotel, and you could in your hotel room you could look out over this practice field. In any event, the idea is to build a community facility. There'll be a big sort of town center that people would come and have dinner at and hang out at year round. Facilities that could be used for travel sports or high school sports and things like that. And in terms of Eastern Prince William, I can tell you it would be a game changer. I don't think anybody's talking about an appropriation from the General Assembly or an appropriation from local government, but a stadium authority would be able to, use tax revenues generated by the project itself. And any kind of approval would be required by the local government in order to build it. But if this thing were located in Eastern Prince William County, it would be a game changer for Eastern Prince William. I can just tell you that. Ever since the Potomac Nationals left about 2 years ago and went to Fredericksburg, there's not a lot of entertainment options in that part of Prince William County. And I knocked about 10,000 doors down there in my 2015 race. And I had people down there that told me they had to build an extra 30 minutes on to go see a movie because they never could be sure whether or not they get stuck on 95 and be late to get anywhere. It's just it's an interesting proposal. We'll see what happens. The bill in front of us is just the bill to create an authority, but it doesn't require any money or anything like that. It's just to authorize an authority. We already have authority on the book for baseball stadium, which never happened. It would just change the baseball to football, I think is what's proposed. Adam, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just that my concern is it would be bonding for against future tax revenue generated by the project. And I've seen the proposal or the proposed development, what the development might look like. And it would be something that would generate a lot of Virginia tax dollars ultimately. So the question to me is, how much of the tax revenue that's generated from the project would they bond off of, would we forego in order to have this kind of facility? Because it looks like it would be good for economic development and built near transit. So there's some attractive features, but I want to see what the bottom line is before I make any kind of commitments.
Yeah, I would also just note that I think it would be if it were to get planned, it would be a real reason for us to look hard at getting the metro extended down Route 1 down to Prince William County sooner rather than later. And that to me is another thing. We need to get that started sooner rather than later. The Board of Supervisors in Fairfax has already approved a 2-stop metro extension in the comp plan, but not beyond that. And the study we just completed that Senator Barker helped me, George and Adam, everybody helped get authorized in the budget last year, said the best way to get metro to Prince William County is to take it right down Route 1 through Fort Belvoir, over the Occoquan into Potomac Mills. And so instead of bringing the blue line down, but in any event, anything we can do to get that started piques my interest. Hey, I know, guys, I know I saw another question over here in the chat about dram shop legislation, and that's a quick one. Yes, there's a bill that's been introduced to create what's called dram shop liability, which means you could sue a bar for giving alcohol to somebody who's drunk, who then goes out and injures somebody. Senator Obenshain, Republican senator from Rockingham, has introduced that bill. It's already the law in, I don't know, probably about 24 states in Virginia. You can't sue a bar that knowingly gets somebody drunk who goes out and hurts someone, and it only applies to ABC licensed events. So it probably wouldn't apply to something like a fraternity party or a party at your home. But if you did pull an ABC permit for an event, like for example, Cinco de Surovell, and somebody drank alcohol and then you knowingly gave them alcohol and they got intoxicated, you let them go, you could be sued for that. That bill is pending, and I think that's something we probably ought to look at so people are more careful about who they serve. So anybody else? And I see Supervisor Stork says he supports the metro extension through Lorton, which is awesome to see. And I know he and myself and Delegate Krizek did a press conference in 2015 about extending the yellow line. So glad to see he's still there on that. 2 minutes for more questions. We got any more questions we can do in 2 minutes, or we should move to closing statements? Philip, I see Philip nodding for closing statements.
Yeah, I think go ahead and start with your closing statements now, yeah.
All right, well, I went first. I'll go last. So why doesn't Paul go first? And Paul, we got to go 2 minutes each. We're going to get out of here in 10 minutes. So.
Yeah, all right. Since I was so long, I'll make it quick and short. I just want to thank everybody for attending today, and especially I see a few of you who have already visited my office via Zoom, and some of you in person with your masks and boosted vaccinations. And it was I enjoyed seeing you and talking and spending some time, even though it was quite quick because we were going to vote or something. But it was it's nice, always nice to see my constituents come and visit. I know it's 100 miles or so down there, and 95 is always a bit of you never know what you can expect. I also want to thank my Chief of Staff, Maria Salgado. She has been doing a great job, as always, managing my calendar and all of my legislation and work and my budget amendments. And she is a one-armed wallpaper hanger, and a very busy wallpapering situation, because she does everything, and I could not do it without her help. And she has a little bit of help, but from two interns who are doing a great job. We have a freshman, Jamie Wise, who's a constituent, and Noah, and I apologize because I can't remember his name. She is a freshman from Richmond and University of Richmond, and he is a junior from VCU, and they're both doing a great job, and I really appreciate their help too. So do come down and try to visit, or even better yet, visit us on Zoom. And I know a number of you have already scheduled future meetings, and we look forward to that. And and I look forward to I'll tell you what, the next 2 weeks are going to be very busy. We're going to really, we're going to see the bills, an onslaught of bills hitting our committees over the next 2 weeks. So if we don't get right back to you, you know why. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Paul. I think, George, you were fourth last time, I think. Why don't you take a shot? 2 minutes.
All right, will do. Thanks everybody for participating today. So great questions, and I'm glad to see so many people involved in the public process here, and trying to help make sure that we're doing the right things down in Richmond. I expect that it's going to be rather busy. We're a little ahead of the house in terms of how many bills we've been dealing with already, but we want to get your input in process. So either phone calls or emails to us would be helpful to let us know what you would like us to do, what you'd like us prioritize, particularly on some of the budget things that Delegate Sickles and Senator Ebbin and Delegate Krizek and everybody will be making moving forward on things on the budget issues. And I think that, anybody who could support the types of things that we're trying to deal with, such as the funding of the support positions in the school systems that right now, because we have not addressed this issue, even though it's 13 years ago since we did what was advertised as a 1 or 2 year temporary thing. We need to get that addressed this year. And if we don't get enough public support, we're not going to go as far as we should on that. So I'd solicit your help and support on those types of things and help guide us in the actions that we take. Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. Mark, I think Delegate Sickles, you're up next.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and your interest in what we're doing. It is a fascinating time with this new administration coming in and trying to help get our state more, improve our situation. Even though you can be proud of the state you live in, we have are ranked top at the top of most areas where you rate governments. This talk about restoring this, restoring that, and open for business. We have been open for business for a long time, and we're going to get broadband to every house in Virginia. We've already funded that with money that came from the federal government. It is going to be hard to get done, but it's already funded. So remember that when people say they're going to finally get it done, we've funded it in the last 2 years. So I would like to just add on that to what everyone else has said about contacting us about issues and bills as they're going through, and then educate us on something we may not see in a particular piece of legislation. And I would like to also thank my Chief of Staff, Andrew Millen, who's on, and my Senior Policy Advisor for Health Care, Don Harris, and Gabe, our intern from VCU. We're working hard. We are really going to start voting and have long sessions beginning next week. We haven't really taken many votes yet, as somebody said earlier, but this freight train is about to move out of the station, and it's going to be something else with all the bills that have been introduced. So pay attention and look forward to working with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark. Adam, batter up.
Thank you, Scott. I want to thank everyone for participating today and for giving us your input. It really helps us do our jobs better. And toward that end, if there's a specific bill that you have a position on and a reason why that bill is bad or good, feel free to email my office at district30@senate.virginia.gov. I want to also mention on social media, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter or something, that's at Adam Ebbin. And I want to thank my staff. Henry Watkins is my Chief of Staff, been working on a Saturday today, not just at this event, but at another, and Molly Montague, my legislative aide, and our interns. And also, I wanted to just say, a lot of times we get ideas for bills brought up during these town meetings. The best time to contact us and follow up on ideas for bills is after the session, whether it's in April, May, June, July, August, whatever. And I want to thank Deb Matthews. She did that, bringing to my attention the lack of genetic privacy when you go to one of those 23andMe or Ancestry.com, that your data could technically be sold in Virginia to an insurance company or something. We don't know if it's happening yet, but we want to prevent it. So I want to thank Deb for that. Anyway, and thanks again just for attending. Take care.
Thanks, Adam. And like everybody else, I want to thank everybody for attending. Our Mount Vernon Town Hall is always one of our better attended ones. I think we had over 70 people online at one point, which is really awesome. I want to also likewise thank my staff, my Chief of Staff, Philip Scranage, who's helped set this up, and you all have heard from a few times, been with me for, what's it been, 4 or 5 years now. But he-
Since 2015.
Since 2015, wow, it's 6 years. So Philip has got this town hall process down. I have a brand new legislative aide, Kelsey Wright, who's actually Senator Ebbin's constituent straight out of college, and really excited to have Kelsey on our team, and Brian McNamara is doing my communication, and we have a whole team of interns working with us in session. And I couldn't do everything I do, move all the bills that I move, et cetera, without all their help. Please make sure you follow our progress on Facebook by either liking or following my official page, not my personal page, unless you want to read about my kids. On Twitter, sign up for my email newsletter, which we send out every week. I also put columns in the Mount Vernon Gazette every week, along with, I think, Paul and Adam often have their columns during session in the Mount Vernon Gazette. And feel free to come to Richmond. You know, our offices are now open again. If you're not comfortable coming to the Pocahontas building, which we're in for only another 8 months before we move to our big brand new General Assembly office building, I do take constituent meetings on Zoom. And if you reach out to my staff, I'm happy to set those up. We usually do them in the morning. And you know, as everybody said, please continue to send us feedback and information. We learn a lot from our constituents and the perspective you bring to the issues that we have to vote on while we're in Richmond. And we're in a very new environment in Richmond this year. And it's going to be an interesting, the next 50 days is going to be interesting. So thank you again for attending, and please keep up the contact, and look forward to seeing everybody out in the community. Thanks for being here.